So what is going on, everybody? Fernando Silva here with another video, and I put out a tweet a couple days ago asking people what they want to see in the next iteration of iPadOS with iPadOS 16, and there seems to be a general consensus that Apple, I don't know if they forgot about iPadOS or, us iPad Pro users or iPad users in general, but it seems like we haven't gotten a real nice upgrade since that 13.4 cursor support, right? There are some things we were promised that should be coming in the next couple months, like universal control, which should help with the iPad Pro experience and help kind of make it feel a little bit better, like we got a nice update. But think about it, with iPadOS 14, what was the headlining feature? It was Scribble, which is something that I use 0 times a day. Like, I rarely ever use Scribble. And then with iPadOS 15, we got a revamp to the multitasking, sort of. It literally does the same thing, it's just a different way to access the multitasking. So again, we've kind of haven't really gotten that nice flagship feature since iPadOS 13.4 when we got the cursor support, and then we got the Today view with the new home screen. And again, with iPadOS 15, we did get a redesigned home screen, but I think, in my opinion, we kind of went backwards because I love the Today view. I love being able to pin the Today view. It gave me a different experience feel every single time I open my iPad Pro, and now it just feels like a big iPhone again, which is not something that I want to have with my iPad Pro. So what I want to do in this video is talk about my iPadOS 16 wish list, some of the things that I want to see brought over to iPadOS 16 in June of next year, and also talk about some of the things that you guys brought up on Twitter in the comments of that Twitter post. But without further ado, let's get into it. Let's talk iPadOS 16. Let's get it. So I'm going to break this iPadOS wishlist into 3 main categories, and the 3 main things that we want to see brought over. The first one we're going to talk about is real home screen customization. Like I mentioned, with iPadOS 15, Apple got rid of the Today view. I guess not totally, because you can still swipe it over, but you can no longer pin it, and that is a section that we used to be able to actually use widgets. When iOS 14 and iPadOS 14 released, and we got some widget access and some widget usage and some widget tools, we were able to use widgets, but only on the Today view with iPadOS 14. And then with iPadOS 15, what Apple did was like, hey, let's open it up, let's get rid of the Today view, or get rid of pinning the Today view, which again was one of my favorite things about the home screen, and then allow widgets from iOS to come over to iPadOS. Apple branded it like a new feature. Yes, it's a new feature for iPadOS, but they literally just rebranded it and brought it over to iPadOS 1 year later, which again brought me 0 satisfaction. But with iPadOS 15, Apple did claim that we can customize our home screens now, but really we can't, right? Yes, we can add widgets. We did get that extra large widget size, which isn't available on iOS, and it's only available on iPadOS 15. But again, we're still stuck on the grid, right? We still got to go from top left to bottom right. You can't move around widgets wherever you want. You can't put icons wherever you want. You're still limited to a certain extent on how many applications you can have on your dock. You can't pin the Today view anymore, so you can't have, your left side of your iPad Pro, or any iPad for that matter, show your main applications or anything like that. So in my opinion, we took a step backwards. Yes, we have widgets all over the screen, but it doesn't look good. It looks kind of ugly in my opinion. I would be very happy if Apple just gave us a Today view or unlocked the grid. If Apple unlocked the home screen grid, it would open a lot more avenues that we can have, widgets and maybe applications kind of circling around the center and leaving the center wide open for whatever you want to show with maybe your background or your wallpaper. But again, that is one of the things that I want brought over. I want Apple to unlock that home screen and let us put applications, put widgets, maybe put live videos, put GIFs, put animations on there. Let us do whatever we want with the home screen, and I don't see why they can't. At least unlock the grid. If they unlock the grid, that would be so much better. It would allow us to put icons anywhere that we want, and that's one of the things that I really want to do in order to clean up the home screen. And then what that will do is psychologically make us think that we're going into a different operating system that isn't iOS and it isn't macOS, it's iPadOS, right? But it makes it feel more computer-like, it makes it feel like it's something new, something different, because we'll be able to organize how we see fit. Again, I'm going to keep reiterating that I miss the Today view and I want that back. Another big one that I personally want is multi-user support. I don't know if you guys remember the days where people shared computers, especially at home. Your home would have a home computer where everybody would have their own login. You have the little icons that say like Fernando or whatever, whoever else is around. And then when you click on your login, it's going to be your computer with your applications, your data, your save files and things like that. Now I know we live in an age where everything is mostly cloud-based now, so it's a little bit different, but still, these iPad Pros especially, they're $1,100. So buying one iPad Pro for everybody in the family isn't really feasible for a lot of people, right? You're $1,100 for a family of 5, that's almost $6,000 in just baseline iPads. So being able to have multi-user support, maybe get a fully loaded iPad Pro just to have thrown around at the house, everybody can have their own account, and it's recognized with Face ID, so if it recognizes my face, It'll go into my home screen with my applications and my widgets and my saved data. And then if my wife wants to log into that same iPad Pro, she has her own account with her games and her applications and her bookmarks on Safari and her Apple ID and things like that. So I want to have some sort of multi-user support, and Apple kind of is hinting at it when they brought in that new focus mode and the change to Do Not Disturb. The new focus modes allow us to change our home screens, kind of take away home screens that we don't want to be using while we're working, and then vice versa. So if you have it, if you're done with work and you want all your games to show up, then that home screen will show up depending on when you set your focus modes. So that's almost sort of like a personalization of different accounts, but you're still within the same account, you're still locked into the same home screen, you're still locked into your Apple ID. So if Apple gave us the ability to create multi-users and kind of assign those with Apple IDs to, again, have your own applications, your own settings, your own notes syncing, your own bookmarks, that would be pristine, especially if you wanted to just buy one $1,500 iPad Pro for everybody in the family to have at the house. I think that's a great thing to bring, and I don't think it would be that difficult for Apple to do it. I mean, they do it on macOS. macOS has had multi-user support since day one. Every freaking Windows computer has had multi-user support since I don't even know when it was, like in the 1990s or 1980s. So it's not something that's new, but it's something that should be brought over to iPadOS, especially the iPad Pros because they're so expensive. Maybe with the iPad 9 generation, the standard one, maybe it doesn't make that much sense for Apple to do that because A, not enough RAM, not enough hard drive, and on the price standpoint, maybe those you can kind of hand around to everybody. But for an iPad Pro, come on now, Apple, give us multi-user support. And then the third and final thing that I want brought over to iPadOS 16, into the iPad Pros and the entire iPad lineup, has to be some sort of pro-level multitasking. Now, on Twitter, a lot of people said that they wanted secondary monitor support or a real version of that. Some people said they wanted floating windows, just like the new Notes application can do. So I'm combining that into pro-level multitasking. And it's a sad time that we have to call just regular multitasking pro-level to be able to get more than one thing done at the same time. But that is what I want. I want to be able to plug in my iPad, get some sort of different UI experience, or maybe even a mirrored version of the iPad, but an empty version of it, right? So even if it shows me just the dock and just a blank home screen, allow me to do a separate one. Like, I'm not asking to get some sort of Samsung Dex UI where everything really changes. It'd be nice to have something like that with iPadOS, but just the ability to A, plug in with just one USB-C cable or Thunderbolt into a monitor like the BenQ one that I have behind me, and then being able to use things not only on the iPad, but then maybe drag things over onto the secondary display. Having that type of secondary monitor support is a must with the iPad Pro, and that's gonna really kind of close that gap between computer and iPad Pro, because I know a lot of people have different functions and uses for the iPad Pro. For some, the iPad Pro is their computer, aka me. For others, the iPad Pro or the iPad is a supplemental device to your current computer setup. And then for others, the iPad is just a throw around content consumption machine. So Apple doesn't really know what to do with the iPad, or at least they haven't made it clear what they want consumers to think about when they think about the iPad. Sometimes they say, hey, it's just a tablet. Sometimes they say, what's a computer, right? Because they want it to be its own little category. And I guess Apple's kind of actually done that, made the iPad its own category. But again, I want it to be a little bit more computer-like, but give me secondary monitor support. And then also with the Notes application and iPadOS 15, maybe Apple is foreshadowing something a little bit different when it comes to floating windows. That functionality sounds great and it seems pretty easy to implement. Obviously, Apple knows what they're doing with the Apple Notes application. The same idea comes with like picture-in-picture video where you can kind of throw it up anywhere on the screen, zoom in to make it bigger, pinch to make the screen smaller. Same thing with the Apple Notes application in terms of the floating window. So I don't know why Apple couldn't bring that floating window idea to all of their applications throughout the Apple ecosystem, especially the native ones, because Apple has full control of those. But overall, that is what I want from a pro-level multitasking. Secondary monitor support, and then actual floating windows that I can throw around. That way I can have maybe a LumaFusion window open. I can have my files window open and drag and drop files into LumaFusion. Or maybe I can have, again, those 7 PowerPoints that I'm always working with. Because the only time I have to go to this MacBook Air is when I'm manipulating multiple PowerPoints, I'm manipulating multiple Excel sheets, I'm in Microsoft Office, because Microsoft Office works amazingly on the iPad Pros, but the moment you go into a third different instance of maybe a Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, or Excel, then things start breaking down from an efficiency standpoint, right? Because you can't really fit all that on the screen. Even though I have the 13-inch or the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, I need more screen real estate to get things done. But that is my wish list when it comes to the top 3 things that I want. Obviously, Apple can make some small changes and some setting changes, maybe smaller features to come in. Like one of my honorable mention features is to give me more functionality with the double tap Apple Pencil shortcut. Like, let me take a picture with that double tap, right? Let me do something else instead of just bring up the eraser. Let me bring up Siri with that double tap. But again, those 3 things that I mentioned. So we have multi-user support, real home screen customization. Don't tell me I can customize my screen and then still lock me into all that stuff and make me feel like I'm using a big iPhone. And that is what's kind of annoying me. It literally feels like I have a big iPhone, which again doesn't differentiate the iPhone and the iPad aside from the actual size of the device. And then finally, give me some real secondary monitor support, floating windows, and like I said, that pro level multitasking. Leave some comments down below. What do you guys want out of iPadOS 16? Are you guys happy with what Apple's done so far with iPadOS 15 lineup, or just iPadOS lineup since they kind of split the two from iOS to iPadOS? Originally, it was great. Like, we were moving. We had iPadOS 13 with a Today View. Then in that same year, they gave us cursor support, which was freaking outstanding. And then I don't know what happened. They slowed down, right? And the one real flagship feature we were supposed to go with iPadOS 15 was universal control. And we still don't have that, and I don't know why. Maybe Apple isn't ready for it. Maybe they're still tweaking it. Maybe it's not perfect for everybody to just pick up and use. So overall, those are my three biggest things. And then one more thing that I've been thinking in the back of my mind is that maybe the reason Apple isn't doing that is because maybe only the iPad Pros can handle that type of actual horsepower and those feature sets. Maybe the iPad 9th generation or maybe the iPad Air 4 won't be able to handle that. And Apple is known for making sure that they don't discriminate based on how much you spend on the iPad. iPadOS, the experience is going to be identical on the 9th generation iPad that's $330, and it's going to be the same exact experience on a fully loaded M1 iPad Pro that's going to cost you $2,500. The experience is the same, which is a pro and a con, because yes, I like the fact that we can go all the way down the lineup, get the same experience at $330, but at the same time, if I'm spending $2,500 on a fully loaded M1 iPad Pro, I expect a little bit more. But overall, that's my 2 cents. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Always happy to discuss down there. And then hopefully in a couple months, or I think we're like 6 months away from WWDC, maybe Apple surprises with some headlining feature, and maybe we'll get universal control soon, because that's going to be a fun one to demo. But that's going to do it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I'm out of here. Peace.